All right. Well, welcome everyone to this Aiki Extensions interview of Linda Holiday Sensei, who wrote the book Journey to the Heart of Aikido. What a wonderfully rich book. There's so much content in it. I know we can only hope to scratch the surface in the half hour or so that we'll be talking. But I'm Susan Dutton. I'm on the board of Aiki Extensions, and with me is my fellow board member, Robert Kent. And who is muted and we can't hear him. And joining us today, gracing us with her wisdom, is Linda Holiday Sensei. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Susan. It's great to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
All right, so we're featuring Aiki authors, and we definitely wanted to go over your book. And as I mentioned earlier, when we were waiting to begin the meeting, I have read this entire book to my Aikido class, one little section at a time at the beginning of class. And I think it's a wonderful grounding in the art. But I'd like to hear a little bit for the audience about your background. How did you come to write this book?
Yes, well, I guess it started 50 years ago, but in the sense that it was 50 years ago that I went to Japan and ended up living in the Kumano area of Japan after having studied in Tokyo for a little while. And I met Anno Sensei there, Motomichi Anno Sensei. He was one of the teachers under Hikikuchi Sensei, who was the chief instructor at that time and for a long time in Sengu. So the kind of inspiration I felt when I met these longtime students of O-Sensei and what they were conveying and the way that they conveyed it and the way they seemed to live the goals of Aikido and the spirit of Aikido, that was such an inspiration, that it has stayed with me all this time, both in Japan and after I came back to America, and then bringing Anno Sensei here to teach for 18 years, starting in 1999 until he stopped traveling in 2017. So it started then in the sense of, big inspiration from those experiences, training with the direct students of O-Sensei in Kumano, Japan. And then having this fantastic opportunity to bring Anno Sensei to California and to the West Coast in 1999, it felt so kind of epic. It felt so kind of meant to be at that time, and it was very inspiring to a lot of people that during that time when, Anno Sensei was here for 3 weeks and I was taking him around to different dojos, and we were having all these wonderful conversations with people, and he was just pouring his heart out in the classes he was teaching. And I remember literally, one day I was by myself and I was driving my car and I was thinking to myself, well, what else can I do to be of service? How else can I bring this out? Because it seems really inspiring and wonderful for people. And it was lovely to share it. And I literally heard the voice, once in a while in your life, you hear the clear voice, and it said, you need to write a book. You need to put this into a book. And I said, no, I'm not an author. I'm not prepared to do this. So I was kind of having this weird little, argument with the voice in my head. And finally, it was so persistent. I just said, okay, I'll do it. I'll write a book. And I talked to Anno Sensei about it, and he said, okay, which kind of surprised me. Mm-hmm. It just took a long time. I've never written a book. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just basically recorded Anno Sensei for a long time and started doing some translation. But it really came from just my own sense of inspiration and wanting to share things that had inspired me. Mm-hmm. And just this sense of, how can I be of service here? So as I was mentioning earlier, I just feel thrilled anytime someone reads the book and feels some inspiration from it, because that's the whole reason for writing it.
Oh, it's a very, very inspiring book. And I think that for me, one of the things that I find interesting, is that when you're talking about journeying to the heart of Aikido, you're really focusing on the spiritual underpinnings of the art that so influenced O-Sensei. And I've heard a lot of Aikidoka say like, oh, the spiritual stuff, and sort of poo-poo it and sort of shove it aside. And so I'm curious how you would react to someone saying, well, what does the spiritual matter?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always look to O-Sensei, he was the founder of Aikido. So, to think, okay, well, what is Aikido? Not just what do I want to do or what do I think, it is, but what did O-Sensei feel and believe and, have as his goals for Aikido. It's pretty clear that he didn't want people to just do physical technique. I mean, physical technique is great and it's important and it's our vehicle, and I do it all the time. But if you look into what O-Sensei taught, it's just pretty clear in what he said, and also the way he conducted himself, that he felt that it was important to not just do physical technique, but to have a spiritual focus and purpose in your training. And spiritual, I think sometimes people define spiritual as something other, something religious, or, I don't want to become a Shintoist, or, that sort of thing. And I think that's completely legitimate. But I think that, one of the gifts I think Anno Sensei has is to give a portal, an in to a sense of spiritual practice that is really just about living your life in a good way, and, striving to be a good human. And part of being a good human is to remember our underlying, connection to nature and to the kami, what O-Sensei would call the kami, the sense of spirit in nature, and the gratitude that we can feel towards that, and the harmony in nature that we can emulate, and then really attempt to bring more harmony into the human social, political, world situation. That O-Sensei talked about that a lot. So why wouldn't we look into that as Aikidoists? I think it just takes some kind of heartful communication of that to help people feel a connection with that, and not just poo-poo it like, that's the spiritual thing, because we are, we're human, we're body, mind, heart, and spirit. We have all those aspects.
Yeah. Well, and I found it interesting the way you translated the term Aikido itself, because you phrased it in a certain way. So if you would share how you translate Aikido.
Oh, I translate Aikido. I'm not sure I do anything translating Aikido. When I'm teaching a beginning class or something in my dojo, I explain that I means harmony, though it's kind of a verb, like harmonize or confluence, coming together. The ki meaning the spirit and the energy, a vital energy flowing through everything, and do meaning the way. So the way of harmonizing energy, the harmonizing energy way. I don't think that's anything unique to me. And what I really like to emphasize, though, like I'm just teaching an intro class in my dojo now, is that the do is really significant, that it's a way of living. And it's significant, I think most people realize it's significant in that, you have like martial arts that end in jutsu, like, which means technique, and then you have ones that end in do, which mean way. And so it's right in the name is indication that this should be something about how you live your life, and not just learning techniques.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think in your book you said it's a way of harmonizing with ki.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and I'm like, okay, so that's a little different than what a lot of people say. And I think, it goes to some of the key points you raise in the book about, you know, or what Anno Sensei says and your understanding of what O-Sensei says.
Mhm.
So there are some interesting concepts in this book that you explore, and I think one that I hear so often when O-Sensei is quoted is about the floating bridge
The floating
between
bridge.
heaven and earth. And so would you say a little bit about the teachings in this book about the floating bridge?
Sure. Um, yeah, the floating bridge of heaven is a reference to Ame no Ukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven. Well, the reason why it's, I think, good to look into this and other things like this is just that it's O-Sensei's vocabulary. It's like a way that O-Sensei expressed things coming out of his history, his milieu, and he grew up steeped in the spirituality of old Japan, the old Shinto stories and the Buddhist teachings. He was just, sometimes people think of O-Sensei as someone who sort of just did a lot of martial arts and then sort of got spiritual in his old age, but he actually started out very, very involved in spiritual, pursuits and going to the temples and shrines and meditating and so on. So this was like how he grew up and how he expressed himself. So when we hear, oh, floating bridge, it's like, we could make up a lot of things, what that might mean, or we could dismiss it. And of course, I'm not O-Sensei, so I can't speak for him. But the floating bridge of heaven in the, kind of Shinto stories is a place of creation. It's a place of creation where complementary energies come together and create and manifest something. So in the kind of the mists of time, when things were not all manifested and created, you have like the two kami, Izanagi and Izanami, who actually represent male and female energies. They stand on this floating bridge of heaven when things were, the earth was not really quite formed yet. And they stir the brine of the sea and then create together the islands of Japan, which represent, the whole world. So O-Sensei said to do Aikido means to stand on the floating bridge of heaven, or you must stand on the floating bridge of heaven in order to do Aikido, like stand on the floating bridge of heaven. Mazu ame no ukihashi ni tatasarete. So it points to kind of, as Anno Sensei says, like a state of being, a state of mind that isn't just dealing with like physical objects, but with a creative flow. And especially I think with Aikido, it's very interesting to think about. There's the two aspects coming together. It's not like one person stands on the floating bridge of heaven and decrees everything. This is a blend. It's a harmony that is a creative process. And we can feel that all the time, on the mat in Aikido, or we could feel that.
So the application to Aikido on the mats is the energy of Nage and Uke coming together.
That's one aspect that I think we can take from that story. And as we're doing techniques in Aikido, there needs to be a blend, right? It's not just one person forcefully imposing something on another person. That could be an effective technique, but perhaps that doesn't have the essence of Aikido in it unless there's some sort of blend. But I think it's also, in my practice and my experience, it's an encouragement to do, you could say, like breathing and ki and exercises that kind of bring you into that state of mind, maybe even before you do a technique. So you have a sense of this harmonious flow that you are exercising, and manifesting from that place. I always try to do something, like when I'm teaching a class, I always do something at the beginning of class. It might be a breathing exercise, meditation, the Torifune, the Furutama practice, something that just accesses the sense of energy flow in your own self.
Mm.
Stand on the floating bridge of heaven, before we get into the partner practice.
Mm-hmm. I love the idea of the opposites, the yin and the yang, as we say, what is yin and yo in Japanese, that as they come together and harmonize, then the creativity flows from that. And so sort of that as a picture of Aikido practice.
Exactly. I think the image is really useful. And then however that comes up, in your own practice, that's how it comes up. But these images that O-Sensei used are so useful. And that's one of the things that I wanted to, that Anno Sensei also puts forth, and I wanted to put in the book, like the image of the opening of the stone door. That's another Shinto myth, kind of stories of the kami where the sun goddess, got angry, went into the cave, closed the door, the light went out of the world. And then, there are all these things that the different kami did to draw her out. And then she came out again and the sun, shone light on the world. And O-Sensei often referred to the second opening of the stone door, like open that stone door, let the light out. Like he said, that's Aikido.
So you call this book Journey to the Heart of Aikido. So what is the heart of Aikido, do you think, that you want people to understand from reading this book?
Well, I'm going to fall back on Anno Sensei here, because really a lot of the, most of the book is actually translated from Japanese, from Anno Sensei speaking. I wanted to bring out what he was bringing out, and then he wanted to bring out what O-Sensei was bringing out. So he says, Anno Sensei says, the heart of Aikido is love, love, harmony, and gratitude. The spirit of love, harmony, and gratitude, and cultivating those strong energies in ourselves through Aikido practice. Spirit of love, harmony, and gratitude, that we need to consciously rebuild this, in our world, and train that into ourselves through our practice of Aikido. That's what he says.
So O-Sensei, there's a sense in which he really felt that practicing Aikido in this larger way would cultivate that inside each one of us. And are the physical movements a part of that?
Well, I would think so, since we do that so much. But that's the whole point, is that we do the physical techniques so much, and they're wonderful, but they're really based on harmony. They're based on harmony, and they're based on a blend. They're based on a sense of working together. So this is one of the things Anno Sensei likes to emphasize. The Aikido practice, it builds a lot of things in us, and it also builds a capacity to cooperate, to work together, to blend forces together, rather than just force something or prevail, like to win over someone else. And then, as we famously hear in Aikido, the victory in Aikido is not about defeating someone else, but about winning over yourself. And then there's the kind of further victory of actually working with other people, right? So if we talk about Aikido as any kind of peace path, how could that happen without working together? And we need to build that spirit of being able to work together and to actually enjoy that, seek that experience and that feeling. So that's harmony, right? And it's famously hard for us to do as humans. And we can have a lot of great ideas, and then on the mat, somebody grabs you and you're struggling with them. So the fact that we try over and over to learn a different way and to blend and to harmonize with each other is hugely significant. such a good practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the physical movements as a parable of sort of human conflict and human conflict resolution and dissolution are so interesting. You know, even just think about a basic Tenkan and think about how that models taking the other person's perspective. Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's really amazing all the different things that we develop in Aikido. And I think it's, Anno Sensei always, what I've learned, from these 50 years of knowing him and studying with him, and I never met O-Sensei, he died the year before I started Aikido. But so I really spent my life trying to learn from people who learned from O-Sensei and Anno Sensei, what a blessing to have known him this long. But what I've learned is that, when he's teaching or speaking, it's always like different levels at once.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned to think that way and to look that way. So like if he's speaking on a physical, if he's showing something on a physical level, it's connected to something on a spiritual level. If he's speaking, clearly on a spiritual level or an interpersonal level, there's, it's clearly connected to the way we can approach our practice on the mat. And I just, I would just encourage everyone who maybe hasn't thought of it that way to like intentionally, think. If you have a teaching on one level, think of it on another level, like do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're doing the investigation, you're doing the exploration that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I think that is fascinating about this book is, I mean, you have so many amazing photographs in here. What is the source of so many of these? Like, here's a picture of, 3 people trying to push O-Sensei, 1 pulling him from behind and 3 pushing him from the front, trying to push him over and not being able to move him. Well, how did you get all these photos?
Well, there's a variety of photos, but some of those photos, like that one, just comes from the Kumano Juku dojo and the people in Kumano that, took pictures of O-Sensei when he was there. That picture was taken in the Kumano Juku dojo in Shingu. And one of those people is Anno Sensei pushing on Sensei. Yeah, so I was just given photos when I was first there 50 years ago. And then since then, yeah, there have been various other sources, but I really wanted photos in the book because it adds to the sense of immediacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things I really wanted for the book. I wanted it to be an experience that wasn't too dry, that wasn't too like didactic or theoretical. And Anno Sensei, that's the way he speaks too. He you can feel, the heart is in it, and he's always talking about like, we're doing this together, we're practicing together, we're studying O-Sensei together. And it's very, it'll draw you in. So the photos to me felt like part of that. I wanted to have photos both of the old days, like with O-Sensei, and also the new days with people in Santa Cruz and Anno Sensei these days, just to make it all very kind of immediate and encouraging. And my publisher, however, did not share my opinion. So I had to really fight for it.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful part of the book. I think your intention with it, and so much calligraphy as well. Original calligraphy of Anno Sensei and O-Sensei.
Yeah, I got to put all the things in there that inspire me.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that it's an encouraging book. That's what I really hope. And also that I really wanted it to be an inclusive book. Like, yes, I put in the history of the, Aikido and Kumano, because it's not written anywhere. It wasn't written anywhere yet, but mostly I didn't want it to be like, oh, this is a Kumano Aikido book. I wanted it to be an O-Sensei book and an Aikido book. And, really, like I intentionally quoted, like, got quotes of O-Sensei that came through different translators and credited them. So it wasn't just me. I
Mhm.
wanted that sense of like that Anno Sensei always says, like, let's study together. Let's
Mhm.
study together and go deep and don't give up. Keep looking into this deeply, because look, what O-Sensei really wanted for Aikido was something, very deep and a contribution to the world.
Mhm. All right, well, thank you. I'm going to open it up now to questions from the audience. So if anyone has a burning question for Linda Holiday Sensei about the book or curiosity, this is your chance.
Question or comment?
Yep.
Well, if I make a comment on this, I really love to read the book because, and I told you this before, Linda Sensei, it's a true gift to to enter somebody's mind. There are a lot of Japanese teachers who do not share their knowledge, and you were able to record all these things that Anno Sensei said and wrote a book about it. So that is really a great gift, because we can have a look inside somebody's head. So thank you for that. It's unique, I think.
Mhm.
Thank you. I was really hoping for that. And Anno Sensei he shares his process, as we say in English, he shares his process, so you find out about, like, so how does he approach his training?
Mhm.
And he's very humble, which is also very refreshing and wonderful. He's very humble. So he's actually really just sharing. This is how he approaches his practice, and this is what inspires him. Yeah. So I was hoping that would come across.
Yeah, and I think it's a precious thing too. This generation of people that was taught directly by O-Sensei is disappearing.
Yes, most of my teachers have passed.
Mhm.
I'm so thrilled that Anno Sensei is still alive at 92. I'm going to be in Japan again in a few weeks and visit him. And he's got arthritis, and he's 92 and that's difficult for him. But he's joyful, and his spirit is shining, and he's still very inspired.
Mhm.
My question sort of follows up on that, which is, you had the experience, and a number of people in sort of our generation had the chance to train with, if not O-Sensei himself, because I too was too young for that, with people who train directly with O-Sensei, whether that's Sao Tome or Saito, or any as well as as Anno Sensei. What would you recommend for someone who sort of has discovered Aikido when they're 20, 24 years old? Maybe they've done the regular college thing and think this is part of their path, like it was for you. If you were doing it now, what would you recommend to your 25-year-old self or something?
What would I recommend in terms of how to train, or where to train, or
of how to not just train, because any good dojo can offer that, but you went on a journey that was not just training.
Yeah. Yes, I went to Japan and ended up in the remote mountains. Times are different now. I mean, you can't duplicate the journey that I had, even if you go to Kumano. And yet it can be quite wonderful to do it. Those people who have the time and, the means and whatever the time in their life to do that. I just, someone I know, Dojo Cho from North Carolina, just went to Japan for a little while, and I arranged for her to go to Kumano, and she met Anno Sensei and just came back so inspired. So I mean, there's little bits of that can be still quite wonderful. But yeah, I mean, there is so much Aikido now. I mean, Aikido has just proliferated since 50 years ago when I first went to Japan, and there wasn't much Aikido in California at that point. But so it's wonderful that Aikido has proliferated, and like you say, you can train all sorts of places and get good things. I would just suggest to people to study also, to take on your own study, like read books. I can recommend at least one very good one. But no, there are wonderful, books. There's actually some interesting things on the internet if you don't get caught up in all the YouTube and weird critical discussions about Aikido. But to study as much as you can the origins and O-Sensei's teachings and his hopes for Aikido, I think is crucial, because as time passes, those things can seem farther away. And so I think that people training now need to make the effort, their own personal effort to study and to be inspired by their study. And perhaps, you can still study with people who are very inspired by O-Sensei and to seek those people out. Because you don't necessarily get that just anywhere where you're training. And you can do it yourself. You can bring it into your own training and then train anywhere and still have that sense of touching the original inspiration of the founder.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Joanna.
Yeah. And Joanna's in Brazil, and I just saw her earlier today.
Actually, mine it's more of this experiencing to have Linda's Sensei book in my own hands. It was I think the second year of the pandemic, or the first one, I met Penny Sensei, and we started exchanging about our Aikido and life journey, and then said, oh, you really need to read my teacher's book, Journey to the Heart of Aikido. And she sent me the book. And, for a period in the pandemic that I was only doing online Aikido, no physical connections or not training, and really receiving a physical book in my own hands with Penny's handwriting notes and dedication about the book and the journey. It was very special. So it was a first touch, I really touched a book that was touched by Penny, that was touched by Linda Sensei. And so all of this connection for me said, okay, what I'm doing is real. It's not only virtual, these connections. And by reading it, it's just like Susan said, it's I could read one page of the book each class that I'm teaching or with each people, because there's a deep lesson on that, different layers. And one part that really touched me, and I use it, has been a while, it's the reflection process of O-Sensei, that there is these 5 steps. And I use this in very difficult situations in my life, very deep conflicts, emotional conflicts with other people, with other relationships. And wow, it's really transformative. So it is a book that we always can find some homework to do on that. It's not only, oh, I'm reading a book and letting the book out. No, I really absorbed the book, and it's very special. So really want to offer these experiences that always, it's memorable, it's for life. So thank you.
Yeah, and we will be putting a link to where the book can be purchased as we post this. So this interview will be put on our YouTube channel, and we'll put a link to purchase it.
I want to mention, in case anybody listening now or later doesn't know about it, I do teach an online class. I call it Misogi class. I used to call it morning Misogi. Now I'm calling it Misogi because there are all these international people, and it's not necessarily morning. But I started this during the pandemic, and I just teaching an online class. It's Monday, Wednesday, our time. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a short class, like between 30 and 45 minutes, but it's just really been great. It's a get together, and we do various Misogi exercises, and we breathe and we chant, and I put out information about O-Sensei and these spiritual underpinnings of the art.
Mhm.
So anybody can look into that. It's possible to join those classes. And if anyone were interested, best way is just to go to my dojo's website, Aikido of Santa Cruz.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything else before we close? All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Linda Sensei. Thank you for this treasure from the heart and mind of O-Sensei and Anno Sensei, and yours as well, because you were the channel. So
Yeah, and I also just want to thank you, Susan and Rob, and all the people who are doing all sorts of good things through Aiki Extensions organization. I've been connected to your organization for many years, and really, and was very honored to be involved in some of the big initiatives, the Training Across Borders seminar in Greece, 2015 and so on. So I really am thankful for your efforts in the world to just bring out Aikido in all sorts of different ways. And yeah, just want to put out my appreciation for that and support as you go forward.
thank you. And we're planning Training Across Borders 2025 right now. So
Wow.
we'll announce that location as soon as we have it finalized. So, all right, I'm going to stop the video now. Thank you everyone for being here, and keep the line open, however.
Arigatou gozaimashita.
So,
Thank you so much.
Bye. See you.